Re-signing for the Detroit Lions this offseason has been officially announced, and that is a 3-year extension for Lions linebacker Derrick Barnes. So let's get right into it. So yes, the Detroit Lions have finally made a re-signing, and this is one that I think we all kind of anticipated was going to happen. To me, this was the easiest question on the quiz. Like, if it's like, hey, who do we resign? This was just such no-brainer. Like, you re-sign Derrick Barnes, you get this deal done, you make this happen. There's no doubt in my mind that this is the right move for the Detroit Lions. And we're going to get to the details here in a second, but got to give a quick shout out. We have this Derrick Barnes jersey in the background that you may not be able to see. It's always back there. I'm really zoomed in right now. But shout out to Michael Banks. He actually gave me that Derrick Barnes jersey as a gift. Not that, like, I think it was like maybe his rookie season or maybe after his rookie season. So he's been on top of this since day one about Derrick Barnes. He had the insight that Derrick Barnes was going to be a long-term piece for the Detroit Lions. And I'm stoked that he is because, one, he's an awesome player and he fits us perfectly. And number two, it's great that I can just keep that jersey in the background. It's fantastic. I mean, I've wore it to a few games, so it's fantastic. Shout out to Derrick Barnes. Shout out to Michael Banks. Derrick Barnes is signing an extension of a 3-year, $25.5 million deal, which is $8.5 million per season at $16 million fully guaranteed on signing is the early report. So $8.5 million per season essentially puts him right with Levante David and what he's making per year. Now, obviously, the cap number continues to rise. So based on when he signed it, that number is going to go up. I think you can look at guys like Blake Cashman, who signed with Minnesota last year. He's making $7.5 million per season. Because of per year, there's about $1 million difference there. So that kind of falls in line. Now, his fully guarantees at signing are about $9.4 million versus the $16 million for Derrick Barnes. And then I also look at guys like Jordan Brooks, who's making $8.75 million. He's a run defender. He's a pass rushing linebacker that also is only getting $9.5 million fully guaranteed. So a per year basis, it's actually a little bit, I think, on the much more reasonable side for the Lions here. But the fully guarantees are pretty heavy for the Lions. They're locking this guy in, and I think this was probably the way to do it. Now, I thought that he'd get somewhere between $7 to $8 million, so maybe it's a little bit on the higher side than what I expected. I assume that third year is going to be a way out for the Lions if they want to do that, but mainly more than just getting a way out, it'll probably be his highest cap number by far. But I thought he'd fall kind of somewhere in line there on a per year basis, so this makes sense. But to me, I definitely looked at it as, hey, especially if you can get him on a little bit of a cheaper price, locking him in more long term would be something I'm open to do. And a lot of times more guarantees kind of leads to that because you're giving him a 3-year deal. I would say it's also worth anticipating an absolute void year at the end of his contract as well. Lions tend to do that with their contracts, but if you're getting this much guaranteed in that small amount of time, you're likely going to have a void year thrown on top as well. Cheaper usually, or less guarantees usually just makes you an unrestricted free agent at the end. That being said, though, as well with Derrick Barnes, this was so well-deserved. MCL and PCL damage, which knocked him out very early in the season. Luckily, it didn't mess with his ACL. His ACL is still intact, as he told us back in week 12 last year. So he was okay there, and that's why we thought there was a potential that he was going to return at some point. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Him and Aiden Hutchinson kind of came into the mix of, like, could either of these guys get back? That did not happen, but it sets up well for 2025 that his ACL was still intact and he didn't have to go through that whole recovery process. And I think the big thing about that is understanding early in the season that he was going to become a free agent. His full focus was on rehab and trying to get back to the team from everything that we had heard. And I got to assume from the Lions' perspective, hearing that, it makes them even more interested in bringing a guy like this back because they understand what his focus was. He wanted to get back on the field. Like, forget the new deal. I got to get back on the field. And this was such an easy answer for the Lions is, one, he just fits us perfectly. He's been along with Calvin Shepard through this entire ride, just like Alex Anzalone, but specifically, who's now our defensive coordinator, switching positions, right? He comes into the league. He's going to be our Mike backer. Utilize him in that role, and it doesn't feel, the most comfortable early. It feels like he's kind of out of place a little bit, and then ultimately the Lions try to put him on the ball, and while there was some bumps early, like, he ultimately just kind of fit in so well to that Sam backer role position to by the point we get to last year and he's be able to play Sam. He can play on the line of scrimmage. He can play over the slot. He can also play into the will backer position. And he always has that flexibility to step back to the Mike linebacker spot. He truly can play every position. Now, skill set wise, there's things that he does better than others. He's not the most fluid coverage piece where you want to ask him to drop in zone and move side to side and shuffle and move laterally. Like, that's not his game. He can play literally everywhere. And he's very good against the run. He's a great tackler. He doesn't allow much leakage when he gets his hands on ball carriers, which means he's bringing guys immediately down. And then as a pass rusher, he's slowly just, I think, gotten better and better. I think there's some limitations there, but remember, back at Purdue, he was playing defensive end, so he's done this before. He just doesn't have some of the, short area agility or even some of the flexibility, I think, to open up so much of a arsenal of pass rush moves. And still, even though he's got very long arms, like uniquely long arms, which is perfect for us when he plays on the ball because he's 6'2", 240, perfect for stack and shed, is perfect for holding an edge. But as a pass rusher, it also can translate a little bit. Now, he hasn't been able to kind of tap into like an arsenal of just being a pure power rusher. But again, that's more so because he's 240 pounds. He's still way undersized against offensive tackles. So that's an area that I still wish there was maybe more to tap into there. And I think there is. But right now, he's kind of just an average, maybe to slightly above average type of pass rusher.
But in fairness to him, his 19 pressures in 2023 was 16th for any linebacker in football, which obviously you're not comparing him to edge rushers at that point, but it still was a relatively strong amount. Now, maybe more opportunities, which is, again, why he's not an elite pass rusher, but that's still putting up some numbers, and he always impacts pass lanes.
Which is okay for us. That's perfectly fine for what that role is, because what he does well, he does at a really high level, and he just feels like he's gotten so comfortable in that role. It was so hard for us to replace Derrick Barnes last season when we lost him. I mean, he was really the first domino to go down, and once we lost him, I mean, it was a scramble just trying to find anybody that could feel comfortable in that spot. We played so many guys in his role last season, and even Alex Anzalone at times. Derrick Barnes is so comfortable in that spot for us, playing on the ball, sliding over to slot, playing that sandbacker position, playing with a lot of field. And because of that, it's such a benefit for the Lions to have him. Last season, we barely saw him, but he had 9 solo tackles, only 2 missed tackles. He had a lot of 56 pass rating. I feel like the game has slowed down ever since he's really settled into that role for us. So one, there's the aspect of he's so unique to our defense that it was so hard to replace him last season that I think that alone could make you say, yeah, we might want to re-sign this guy. All right, trying to find another Derrick Barnes may be pretty difficult. And it tells you that the Lions are going to keep that role intact for Derrick Barnes going forward. But
they want to highlight some of his assignment flexibility, like here when he's on the ball, you're thinking he's pass rushing, and then he can drop out into kind of that flat zone and just step inside. So a cornerback can show inside leverage at the snap, jump outside leverage, and in this case, it looks like the slant's there. Barnes can drop into that lane, take it away, and now the pass is gone. And Barnes is comfortable with finding that, playing underneath, and then obviously has the length to be a real problem if you throw that direction.
I think he plays with so much more control when you see him in coverage alignments. His ability to really just worry about the flats in coverage when he's playing on the ball. You kind of see that side shuffle. It's very controlled. It's fluid. He's always had the straight line speed. So when he used to play Mike and we put him in Tampa 2 assignments, he could run the seam very easily. I thought that was where he's most comfortable. But he's always had that long speed. And I think it translates so well now. He's got the length. He can jam tight ends off the line of scrimmage. He translates so well. The game has slowed down. The RPO action that they try to put him in there. Short area quickness may not be his best asset, but what he does do is he plays with a lot of patience, and we see him just showing up clutch. 2 games that we saw him in last year was Tampa Bay, was really the last time we officially saw him. At the end of the game, makes a clutch play, bats the ball at the line of scrimmage, gives our offense the ball back. Unfortunately, we don't score, but he bats at the line of scrimmage because he's patient, right? He's reading through the mesh point. He's not letting a tight end get out to the flat, and he breaks it down at the line of scrimmage. Then you go the year before, obviously he picks off Tampa Bay from that same alignment, ends the game, and we're moving on to the next round in the playoffs. Like, he's been clutch in that position, been some development as pass rusher. There's a little bit more, I think, nuance with his hand usage. There's a little dip rip that he tries to get to. I think in the coverage, again, it just fits his skill set because he plays with calmness, because he does have some of that straight line movement speed. In terms of run defender, that's where he shines. He's stout at the point of attack. He's physical as heck as a tackler. You're not going to really run through many of his tackles. Now, he may miss a few, but for the most part, if he gets his hands on you, you're probably going down. You're probably not picking up much after contact against Derrick Barnes. He's physical, too. I mean, he comes in swinging. I guess sometimes that could be a problem, but he comes in swinging as a tackler, and the length is fantastic. And because of that, he can kind of work through tight ends. He can work through blocks and still make a play. He's got a very quick trigger that I think also playing him in that Sam role allows him to play super fast, where you'll see him just scrape off the backside in a hurry. It's immediate. There's not a lot of, it feels like thinking to it. It's just a fast process. I'm getting there. And we got just multiple plays where he's tracking people down sideline to sideline. He's very capable of that. I'd like to see maybe more of him, kind of working from one gap to another, being able to open up more success there. Obviously, he's not the loosest player, so I think that shows up a little bit, that he can hold his ground and kind of pin guys back while he's setting his gap. But in terms of being able to work over gaps consistently, that feels a little bit limited as well. But the lockout length is great. This was just a no-brainer. If there was really anybody that was like re-signed, it was Derrick Barnes. Now, I think there's a case Derrick Barnes has much stronger value with us than anywhere else. But I also think the Lions took care of their guy here in Derrick Barnes and gave him some good guaranteed money because, like me, I wasn't really concerned about the injury thing. I mean, we'll have to see where it is. They have the doctors for that. But long-term, I was pretty confident he's going to be okay. And it's just simply about like, hey, maybe this helped us. I mean, if you'd have played all season the way that he started the year, his price point got out really high, especially if he started to add some pass rush juice. I mean, if this guy walks away with 5 sacks, this guy's price point actually could have kind of jumped a lot, even though linebackers aren't valued the same. So I think the Lions took care of him. They understand his value, and they didn't need last year to understand his value. And I think that says everything about Derrick Barnes. So welcome back, Derrick Barnes, to the squad. Well deserved. I'm happy to have him back. It's such a unique role, and he's such a unique player that it fits perfectly. It's awesome. It's a really cool story to figure out how he got to where he is now when there were so many questions early and it looked kind of bumpy early and they had so much excitement. Like, man, you're going to be the green dot of this defense. And now he's settled in. He can play literally everywhere. He, I think, is just the perfect Detroit Lion on that defense. And I got to believe Kelvin Shepard is hyped that he is back. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Welcome back, Derrick Barnes. Thank you, Brad, for watching. And I'm out.